Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello and welcome in to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik, as always, and this is episode number 205 of the Baseball Podcast. That's right, episode 205 here on Monday, July 13th. We are getting ever so close to the return of Major League Baseball. We are officially 10 days away from opening day. Thank goodness. Please fast forward if we could. 10 days from opening night, where we're going to get Nationals, Yankees, followed by Giants, Dodgers, and then the rest of Major League Baseball opening up on 24th. But even before that, on the 18th, 19th, and 20th, that's next weekend, we are going to have inter-squad games. I don't know everybody's schedule or what they have planned here. The Phillies, I believe, are staying as local as possible, going to Baltimore, D.C., and New York. So I assume the rest of the country, the teams are trying to stay as local as they can as well, but still get in some games against opposition and almost give it a test run a weekend before Major League Baseball is set to open up for real here. But we got a great show lined up for you today. Jumping right into it here, the first segment on Friday, Major League Baseball diving into the coronavirus, of course. That's where we start pretty much every episode, and we'll start every episode until we get into the regular season and have some actual baseball to talk about with you guys. But on Friday, Major League Baseball released some data in regards to the testing and kind of giving an update on here Sunday evening as of time of recording. Like I said, these were Friday's results, so there should be some additional units added to both categories here. But upon arrival, 58 players tested positive. We had discussed that in previous episodes, but we are up to now 13 positive tests after workouts have started. So while Major League Baseball is in the quote-unquote monitoring phase, which is players getting tested every other day, at least staff getting tested twice a week, and this will continue into the regular season, well, 13 players have still tested positive, even though Major League Baseball is taking all the necessary precautions that they can. It's just, again, the continued exposure that all these players are going to have, whether it's their commute home or walking the dog out at the park, stopping at Wawa locally. You guys out there listening don't know what that is. My local listeners will know. My national listeners will not. But it's a local food chain, so to speak, where they're just going to grab a sub and then be on their way. But they're going to get exposed that way too. So out of the 13 players who have tested positive, it's also been 10 different teams. So we have yet to really see an outbreak within a clubhouse, which is good news for teams. The fact that even though individuals are testing positive, it seems to be the amount of testing has been sufficient enough to catch this or to catch a person with a positive result before they're able to spread the virus to others within the clubhouse. But the 10 teams, that's also a third of the league. So no team has been immune to the coronavirus, and yet no team has really been hit hard by the virus. No team has yet to report 5, 6, 7 individuals all at once testing positive, and that seems to be the overlying question that is yet to be answered, and that is, what is the number of players on a team at a given point that would have to test positive in order for baseball to step in and basically say, hey, we got to shut this down. And honestly, I think it's close to the numbers I referenced just a moment ago, that being 5, 6, 7 individuals all at once or within a day or two testing positive. If you get 3 positive tests one day and then 4 positive tests the next day, or 3 and 3, I think at that point Major League Baseball would certainly put a halt on the advancement of that team and would very much look into their recent contact and tracing. Who did they play? Where were they? What's going on? How is that team doing? Maybe put a pause on the entire league for about 48 hours. Just say, hey, I know all these dates are secure, but we're going to push everything back because we just got to pause and make sure this hasn't spread throughout the entire league. And if negatives continue elsewhere, maybe they carry on. It's just a fascinating conversation to find out, and it's one that's not only baseball, but this is the exact same conversation that basketball, hockey, football, college football, everybody's having right now is, hey, where is this line? Where would we be comfortable with saying whether it's a percentage of players on a team? Obviously, the rosters in football are much, much larger than that of baseball or even basketball, being on the small end at 10 to 15 individuals. Baseball being 25 to 30, and football, of course, upwards of 75 people on a team. Is it a percentage thing? Because if it's 6 out of 30 in Major League Baseball, you go 6 out of 12 in the NBA, of course, you're going to shut things down. So is it 2 or 3 for basketball? It's just a crazy conversation that you hope commissioners and high-level officials are continuously having with each other. You certainly hope, and we haven't seen anything come out to the general public, and I haven't heard anything within the industry about continued conversations between the MLBPA, Tony Clark, and Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, with these positive tests and positive results. It's basically been a club-by-club response to it, or organization to organization. They've been having individual press conferences. They've been setting their own restrictions. They've been pushing off workouts to do a deep clean. But none of this has been said by Rob Manfred ever since that agreement has taken place a couple of weeks ago. We haven't had a quote-unquote State of the Union from him on, yes, this is how it went, this is where we are, we've had some positives, this is how we're feeling, we're ever evolving. The only thing we've seen is basically the statement released on the delays of testing around the July 4th holiday. But they haven't come out and talked about, we're moving forward, things are looking good. Tony Clark and I are continuing to discuss safety and continuing to discuss the ever-evolving landscape because, of course, things today, Monday the 13th, are different than they were last week on Monday the 6th during episode 203, whether it's the number of positive cases across the country or the number of local hotspots or even local guidelines or accordances that people need to abide by have changed on a week-to-week basis. Some people have hit pause. Some people continue to expand the opening, and it's fascinating to see. And I would think at a time like this, when people realize communication is at a premium, when everything is changing, you almost have to be talking daily, at the very least weekly. Like I just mentioned, the differences in 7 days could be astronomical. So I would say every other day. And Tony Clark and Rob Manfred have both been silent through this entire thing. So I look for one of them to come out, obviously have a conversation before opening day. Hey, we made it through training camp. Yes, we had this percentage of positive tests. We assumed this would happen due to the fact that baseball players are not immune. It's under the threshold of it really being a concern for us. We anticipated this. Our protocols have been put in place and are responding properly. That's why we haven't had an outbreak. We're getting nothing right now from Manfred as he continues to, kind of be in the background and then slither his way out, talk about baseball. It's 100% this, that, and then he's walking back and now he just disappears because everything's happy-go-lucky. The teams are back out there. They're doing inter-squad practices and people aren't talking about him anymore. So he thinks he can kind of fade into the darkness. Well, I'm saying, dude, you got to keep talking, Rob. You got to keep being out there in front of the media. Keep being available to answer questions as concerns are brought up and players continue to opt out, which we'll talk about here in an upcoming segment. The second segment, we'll talk about the latest in the opt-outs and potential concerns moving into the rest of the regular season around opt-outs. But continuing our coronavirus conversation, Aroldis Chapman is the latest high-profile player to test positive for the New York Yankees, and Chapman was one of those guys to be tested during the monitoring phase. To have a positive test, he threw a bullpen just this past Tuesday at Yankee Stadium. There's been no word since last Tuesday about whether or not he's been on site. I would assume most likely not. I mean, Wednesday he probably showed up for a couple of minutes to get his test or to see what needed to be done, and then he was probably on his way based on the fact that he had thrown Tuesday. It's been reported that he is only showing mild symptoms and is doing relatively well in regards to his recovery, but it is certainly anticipated now. It is at least going to be a couple of weeks, and then a week or two after that for him to be able to ramp up and get himself back into shape. So you're looking at a month here when it comes to Aroldis Chapman, and that puts you into August, which means you're going to be about 3 weeks into the Major League season, and 3 weeks is 17, 18 games, which is a lot of games during a 60-game season. So once again, Aroldis Chapman should be back in regards to the long haul of the regular season, and there shouldn't be any long-term effects, or at least those are the reports currently out there. But once again, he's going to miss the first couple of weeks, due to the coronavirus, and then I would say one more to potentially get physically ready once again to throw off a mound. So another loss for the New York Yankees. This is their third positive test. The city of New York, it's crazy. The more I look into this, the Yankees continue to come up. It's going to be one of those things where I do believe that local coronavirus numbers, as well as just being the biggest city in the United States, could have an effect on these New York teams. Again, these guys just walking around the corner, going to the local hot dog shop, pizza shop, whatever it is, trying to get some fresh air, walking around the block. There's just the amount of people and the amount of overlap in New York City is exponentially greater than some of these other locations these guys are playing in, where they can socially distance and aren't right in a mega downtown such as Queens or the Bronx. And it'll be fascinating to see if the number of positive cases are higher amongst those in LA or Chicago or New York, as opposed to some other people in some smaller cities, Seattle, even Minneapolis, right in downtown, has a potential to spread things. So it'll be fascinating to see if population coronavirus testing, not in regards to baseball, just overall results, hotspots, if they overlap into baseball and you see more positives amongst the hot spots such as Texas, California, Florida, things along those lines. It'll be a crazy storyline definitely to follow along with. But the Houston Astros canceled Saturday's workout. This was due to a staff member being exposed outside of the stadium. Once again, went to a little gathering where he later found out somebody who was there had tested positive. So out of precaution, the Astros shut down Saturday's workout, and a lot of teams are doing this. They are not pushing it. I'll give credit to the MLB teams. It's a change in the guard. A lot of times these teams would be, hey, if you can practice, if you're injured or you're hurt, get out there, push the envelope, moving forward, 2-a-days, intensity. Well, now they're understanding the situation here and basically saying if there's any sort of 50-50 ball in the air, we're going to choose the safe side just because that's the way we're going to go about it moving forward. So Alex Bregman was held out a day of workouts due to a delay in his testing results. This is the second time I've heard this happen within Major League Baseball. It happened to a Philadelphia Philly. Certainly not as big of a name as Bregman, so it didn't make national news. But be aware out there, baseball fans, there's going to be a day where your favorite player or top player in the lineup is going to be out of the lineup, and it's not going to be a quote-unquote off day. It's going to be a safety precaution because his test result hasn't come back yet. So a lot of guys are going to get days off that really aren't off. They're saying, hey, man, stay home. We got to wait till tomorrow to get your test back, and if it's in the air, we're going to wait until it says negative, and, you're not going to play today, Mike Trout. I'm sorry. Harper, you got to sit out today. We don't have your test back. So it's going to be frustrating as a fan, but you certainly understand it and applaud the teams for taking the safety approach moving forward. Royals backup catcher Cam Gallagher, he practiced on Friday and then had a positive test on Saturday. So this will be a little bit of a fascinating storyline to follow here over the next couple of days because, of course, he was touching baseballs. He was in the locker room. He was taking at bats, rounding bases, doing his thing, playing ball, and then the next day test positive. So when did that happen? Friday night after he left? Did he go out to get a beer? Did he grab dinner to go? What's the deal there? So is there another positive test due to tracing over the next couple of days in Royals camp? And does this blow up into the first quote-unquote pandemic within baseball where 3, 4, 5 individuals get it because they didn't catch it in time? Or is this one of those positive success stories? Again, he played Friday, went home, got up Saturday, tested positive. We shut him down for 2 weeks. Nobody else tested positive. This is how the system is supposed to work. Again, tune into Kansas City camp over the next couple of days and see if the storyline is, hey, we did it, this is the way it's supposed to go, or we're in trouble, this is just the first domino, there's no shot this summer happens. It may be a little bit of a microcosm of what we're dealing with this summer currently in Kansas City. And to wrap things up here in the first segment, Joey Gallo is just, he's fascinated by this entire situation just due to, again, he's missed the first couple of weeks of Rangers camp due to a couple of positive tests. Well, he's come out and basically said he never experienced symptoms, and in between those positive tests, which there were 2 of them, were multiple negative tests as well. So negative, positive, negative, positive, negative is basically the vibe I'm getting out of Joey Gallo from his comments and his interview, and he doesn't understand. And it's fascinating for me, and it just makes me think, okay, how accurate is this testing? Well, of course it's accurate. It's been approved. It goes through all the channels. They're not just throwing it out there for these guys. But again, I mean, you're going to have false positives and false negatives when it comes to testing because nothing is 100%. And a guy tested himself 4 or 5 times, getting a 50-50 back of results while not experiencing symptoms is just a fascinating story, really, and just kind of sums up 2020 and really where we're at. But again, they go the safe route. They say, stay away, dude. Even if it is a false positive, we can't have you at camp. We got to sit you out for 2 weeks. We'll see you then. Don't worry. You'll be ready to go. So coronavirus continues to be a story. It's going to be a story throughout the entire summer. So get used to hearing more about it. Who's out, what effects it's having. Again, maybe we'll follow up on the Royals camp, see where it takes us, as well as keeping you guys updated on everybody who's tested positive and where we're going, moving forward. But that'll wrap it up for the first segment here of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to talk about opt-outs. There's continued coronavirus opt-outs. That list grows and grows. And then there's some concern about getting into the regular season and potential opt-outs happening then. So stick around, everybody. I am Kevin Mahalik. This is the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode number 205 of the Baseball Podcast. I appreciate everybody listening in today on Monday, July 13th. Before we dive into the second segment here, I will take this next minute or so to ask you guys to head to social media. Check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're most active on Twitter as well as Facebook, keeping you guys up to date. And honestly, now that we're getting into workouts, now that we're getting into the regular season, the social media aspect of the Baseball Podcast has certainly picked up during the off season, during the Twitch video game tournament that was dominating social media. Honestly, I didn't engage much, but now a lot of teams are posting videos of their inter-squad games, posting videos, pictures of home runs being hit, strikeouts, pitching ninja style of pitches, disgusting style of pitches. So look to head to Twitter, GSMC Baseball Podcast. We're putting out a lot of good content, keeping you guys updated on everything going on across the league, as well as the Facebook page where you guys will get alerted to the latest episodes. If you want to know right when it comes out, boom, follow us on Facebook. You'll be alerted right there. As well as wherever you're listening to this right now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher. Please leave a 5-star rating, write a review for the podcast. We appreciate everybody out there who has already done so. We're always looking to grow those numbers, and they go a long way, honestly. Getting to know more and more here behind the scenes on how things work, spreading the word, growing the podcast, growing audience, growing the listeners. Those 5-star reviews really do help. So if you could take just a couple of seconds, scroll up, click the star all the way on the right, I'd really appreciate it. And we here at the GSMC Podcast Network certainly appreciate you guys tuning in today. But diving into segment number 2 here, talking about continued coronavirus opt-outs. Last time we discussed David Price and Ian Desmond were the highest profile names or the largest names at that point to opt out for the season, especially referencing David Price because he paid minor leaguers for the month of July and then decided to opt out, so he won't even be getting compensated for this year. So he paid for them on previous year's salary. So another shout out to David Price for being a stand-up guy and taking care of those minor leaguers and, reaching out to make sure that they're all okay. But the latest names that we've seen here over the past couple of days, we have a couple, it looks like 4 more since our previous episode. Braves outfielder Nick Markakis has opted out. Honestly, I was a bit surprised when I saw this, and as a Phillies fan, this is a loss for the Atlanta Braves. So I just thought to myself, man, that one stings. As a Braves fan, I know that team is loaded top to bottom, and believe me, they're going to be just fine without Nick Markakis. I don't think this takes them from NL East favorites to out of the playoffs or anything like that. It certainly makes them worse today than they were yesterday, but still the favorites in the NL East, and still a very high-quality team here for the summer. But Nick Markakis, he cited his family, his young children, and then a couple of conversations he had with Freddie Freeman. We detailed Freddie Freeman and his battle with the coronavirus in previous episodes about how things at times weren't going great, and he was really struggling with the virus. The latest reports are that he is continuing to recover, and, I don't know. I don't want to say he'll be fine, but things are headed in that direction based on my understanding of the information out there. But Nick Markakis said, hey, he talked to Freeman. He realized what this thing could possibly do, some of the stress and the weight it could put on your family, and ultimately it's not worth it for Nick Markakis, and he's going to sit out. So the Braves in the outfield now have an opening, as well as from the offensive side, Markakis, an above-average offensive hitter, and that's somebody that they'll have to replace, and that could lead to an opening possibly at the designated hitter role with somebody moving to the outfield there and advancing the lineup that way. So next on the list to opt out was Pirates pitcher Hector Noesi. He was on a minor league deal. Hector basically, again, just decided family, travel, everything going on. He's on a minor league deal. He may have not made the team anyway. He's really trying to extend his career, and he just decided, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm just ultimately going to sit this year out, work out, stay home, and try to push things back or run things back in 2021 moving forward. But another huge name to opt out, and for a reason that I didn't know anything about until he shared it, was Giants catcher Buster Posey. Buster Posey will not play this year for the San Francisco Giants. Understandable, once again, a 9-year veteran who has made his money, the largest catching contract in baseball. We've referenced it during the JT Realmuto conversation about his contract and where he wants to be. Joe Mauer is in there as well, but Buster Posey, from behind the dish perspective, is that top guy from a contract. Well, He recently came out with a statement that said he adopted premature twins just recently. So this is obviously a huge concern when it comes to the coronavirus, and those two twins are very high-risk individuals. So Buster Posey would basically not be allowed to be around his wife or the two twins for the next 2 to 3 months with the Giants. Really not looking to be that competitive this summer. I think Buster looked in the mirror and said, hey, the timing just isn't right for everything that's going on with my family and my career. I just need to take a year off and come back in 2021. And he is one of those individuals that is not high risk himself, so he will not gain service time. He will not be paid, but he is under contract through next year and will be back for the 2021 season. He's just sitting out, these next couple of months because the twins will be in and out of the hospital. He can't be on the road back and forth and having to quarantine if one of his teammates tests positive, not even him. He could potentially be exposed, which could expose the wife, and it's just not the place Buster Posey needs to be, and I respect that. It's again, I don't know the individuals who, and I'm not going to try to predict who will be next, like I've talked about, because again, I didn't know Buster Posey had recently adopted premature twins. So I don't know which other players and their home life aspects are just overwhelmingly on the side of that I need to sit out and I can't have this level of risk in my life for the next couple of months. And another pitcher that decided that, the last one here, who's recently come out in the past day or two, is White Sox pitcher Michael Kopech, the hard-throwing right-hander, big-time prospect. He had Tommy John surgery, triple digits. People were excited about his upside, only being 20, 22 years old, whatever it is exactly, very young. But he's decided to sit out. He was out of camp the first week or so for quote-unquote personal reasons, and now it's come out that he is not playing this year. He is not high risk. He is very early on in his career, so he's not arbitration eligible. He's on the minimum. He understands that sitting out this year is going to push back ultimately his free agency period. This is what the players have been fighting for in regards to service time manipulation, is that extra year of control. Well, Michael's basically given the White Sox another year of control moving forward. Well, he'll be paid on a minimum salary at age 25 now, as opposed to his first year of arbitration and getting to that 7-figure deal. But just the health aspect from Kopech, he decided this really isn't the time or place. He's not comfortable with it. And the coronavirus weighs on people differently. It really does. Some people, again, are extremely concerned. I know you guys listening out there, there's one of you listening that is extremely concerned, hasn't left the house much, bought ahead, continues to buy in bulk, stays home, is working from home, and is riding things out. And then there's other listening that were out at the bar this past weekend, and we're out at friends' barbecue and in the pool, and, have been out drinking and ordering takeout all the time. And it's just kind of fascinating to see the differences. And of course, Major League Baseball players being no different. There's one side of the coin that's extremely concerned, and then there's the other side who's obviously going to be respectable to that first side and not be gallivanting around out there because they do want to have baseball and ultimately get paid, because if you don't have baseball, you don't get paid. So be smart, stay out of trouble, but also not going above and beyond and not sanitizing their hands every 15 minutes after touching the community water fountain or something like that, even though everybody in the building has tested negative. So it is something to monitor moving forward. We're really kind of getting up to the brink of the start of the baseball season, so I would be surprised between now, the 13th, and 10 days from now, the 23rd, if there was an additional player to opt out. If somebody hasn't reported to camp yet or has maybe left camp, Robinson Cano comes to mind. I think he's out for personal reasons. The rumor mill is starting the coronavirus positive test, grapevine tree. So I don't know. I'm not buying that, but whatever. He's not there, so maybe that is a name who's thinking about not playing and weighing both sides. But people who are in camp, in my opinion, are going to play unless there's a breakout here in the next week or so. But the next conversation to have here, as we're wrapping up this second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, is conversations that I'm beginning to have with people in the industry. Some agents are saying, some team officials are whispering about potential concern. is people are calling it quote unquote graduation day, where you as a player hit the next plateau when it comes to service time eligibility. And in a compressed 2020 season, 1 day of service time over the normal length of the regular season is basically just under 3 days now for this summer. It's like 2.7 something, right? So round it up to 3 days. I don't know, 2.5 if you want to go on the low end. So every day you're on the roster during the major leagues this summer is equivalent to that of 2.5 or 3 days during a normal summer. So who am I talking about? Or what are these agents talking about? Well, there's 3 levels of graduation, we'll call it graduation. So arbitration, it starts in year 3, but is year 3, 4, and 5. So all of those are key levels, but year 3 is obviously the biggest level. Then you get to year 6, which is free agency, 6, 7, 8, 9. The next one is year 10, which is when your pension kicks in for Major League Baseball. So years 3, 6, and 10 are kind of those big ceremonious years of service time where, hey, you did it. You made it, okay? So you can get paid now, you can get paid more, and then you can get paid later is basically what's going on there. Well, case in point is kind of these next 5 individuals or so I have written down here are just the names I thought of off the top of my head after doing some research and looking into things. But there's a lot of little names or a lot of less known names locally that I'm sure you, the fan out there, will know to think about individuals who could potentially be in this situation. Well, George Springer was held down years ago, the day after, again, service time manipulation. So they had him through this year. Well, George Springer could play literally until July 25th. If he plays for 2 days, that gives him the 5 to 6 days of service time, which makes him free agent eligible. So George could literally play 2 games out of 3, or even if he wants to roll the dice and go all of opening weekend and then say, hey, now I'm done, now I'm sitting out, and he will still be a free agent come the winter time in regards to his status for 2021 because he hits that threshold. It's literally 2 days for George Springer. It's fascinating. It's crazy how they do it. But the next one is James Paxton. James Paxton is 7 days away from free agency. He would have to play the 24th to the 31st to ultimately hit his 3 weeks or whatever it is to get there moving forward. Marcus Stroman of the New York Mets, he needs 8 days to hit free agency. So think about Marcus Stroman in the New York Mets. Paxton, he's probably going to play. But Stroman's on the Mets. They lose Thor. They have other injuries. Cano's not playing. Cespedes is back out. I don't know. Just say things go wrong in the Big Apple. Well, you're in the middle of August. You're in the first week of September. You're 10 games out. And Marcus Stroman has already accessed his free agency. Why would he continue to expose himself to the coronavirus, which could impact his next contract? Because teams are going to say, hey, we don't know the long-term ramifications of having this virus in your body. Maybe you won't be able to throw 95 miles an hour anymore. We don't know. We're not taking that chance. So he sits out come the All-Star break, come the middle of August saying, hey, we're done, I'm out, I'm hitting free agency. Marcus Semien, the Oakland A's shortstop, he needs 19 days so he could play into August and then sit out. And then the biggest one, I don't think this one happens, but Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts has 36 days until he, quote-unquote, hits free agency. So give him until the end of August. He's in the first week of September. Things have gone crazy wrong out in L.A. They're trailing the Rockies and the Diamondbacks in the NL West, and Mookie Betts says, you know what? I ain't playing. I'm waiting for my $400 million. I'm done. I'm not getting the coronavirus. It's fascinating what could happen. And there are a ton of veterans who are in this situation. I mean, I referenced Buster Posey opting out earlier in this segment. He's been in the league 9 years. He's going to sit out this year, come back next year, full year, hit 10 years, still get his pension. So even though he's missing a year, he's still going to reach that 10-year plateau to hit the pension. But, think about your local team. Who are the veterans on the squad who could sit out if things start to go south? If you're the Phillies, Maybe it's JT Realmuto, who's going to be a free agent. Maybe it's Jake Arrieta, who's going to opt out and need a new deal and doesn't want to expose himself. There's plenty of veteran names who this could come into play, and that's where the agents and people in the industry are saying, hey, make sure you check individuals, and if they have a graduation day coming up this summer, when they hit that date, don't be surprised if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands be raised saying, hey, I'm going to be a free agent. Our team's not that great. I'll see y'all. Thanks. It's been fun. So it would suck as a fan to watch that, but I know it's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. I don't know what else to tell you, but we'll pause here. That'll wrap it up for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. As always, we'll pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we're going to talk about teams who are most likely to add at the trade deadline, teams that are going to go all in for 2020. It's a fascinating list, and I know somebody is going to make a move. So stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik, and this is episode number 205 of the Baseball Podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. We've had a great show so far. We've talked everything from coronavirus, the positive tests, and then continue the conversation into who's opting out and who could opt out for the rest of the summer. So I know just about a half hour of conversation around the coronavirus. It seems a bit negative. It seems a bit down. Well, it's not. And honestly, I'm feeling good about where we're at heading into the 2020 season. Every day that moves forward here is a day we're closer to baseball, is a day ultimately I think we're going to continue to learn as a country. We're continuing to find out that, yes, there are going to be positives, but we have this thing contained in regards to baseball as a whole, and we should be able to at least get underway and give me a few games of baseball before things shut down potentially until 2021. But wrapping up, or diving into segment 3 here, trending more positively on some of the vibes and things we're looking at. Let's talk about this summer actual baseball and teams that will be looking to add at the trade deadline. Once again, there is one trade deadline this summer as opposed to 2, which have been in the past. It will be August 31st, so just beyond the halfway point. Things shut down September 27th, start up July 24th, so just past halfway there at the end of August. It'll certainly give your team enough time to say, hey, we're either tanking or we're in or we're out, or it's going to be worth kind of taking a shot here moving forward. But obviously, teams are going to be hard-pressed to give up their top-end talent to really go all in, because if teams don't want to give up top-end talent for half a year of somebody when it's 80 games, they're not going to do it when literally I said it's the 31st. So if you're looking at the 30th travel date, you're looking at like 24 games, 23 games that this player could potentially play in your jersey before walking or leaving in free agency, because we all know the most common people who are dealt at the deadline are those with impending free agency, because the team that knows they're going to lose that player to free agency for nothing is trying to recoup some assets as opposed to just letting them walk. But the team giving up the assets, again, hey, it's for 20 games and he's going to walk anyway, so I'm not giving you my top shelf stuff. I'm not giving you the good alcohol tonight. You guys are going to be drinking bottom shelf and going to be happy that you're getting any alcohol for this guy. It is basically what's going on here if I were a bartender in that situation. So teams, however, that are kind of in that middle ground sweet spot, that are looking to take the next step, looking to potentially make a move this summer, make things interesting, really kind of go all in. I have a list of 10 here. I don't know. This isn't 1 to 10 in likelihood, so to speak. Honestly, I was just kind of going through the teams and wrote down who I think could be, most aggressive at the deadline. I looked into their farm system rankings, where the minor leagues rank up in regards to prospects. So do they have anything to give up? And then ultimately what they could be looking to add, as well as, again, what they're going to be giving up for it. So my number one team here, or number one on the list, Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course, adding Bumgarner, a few other individuals to the lineup. It's a very solid lineup out west. They're looking up at the LA Dodgers, as is everybody else, but they're certainly firm in the wild card race. Their minor league system is ranked number 8 right now, so a top 10 minor league program for the D-backs. They have prospects to move if that's the way they want to go, and it's going to be pitching in Arizona. They're going to need pitching. People have opted out. Mike Leake opted out, so they need another arm in the rotation. They added some solid guys to the lineup once again, but the arms are ultimately what going to carry them into the playoffs if that's the way they go. The next team I have here, the Atlanta Braves. Let's see. Their farm system is number 3. So Atlanta, gosh darn it, as a Phillies fan, it kills me to say this, but Atlanta right now is just humming along as an organization. Obviously, last year winning the NL East, they losing 5 in the NLDS, but 100 wins right there again. Favorites in the NL East, crazy, young, inexpensive talent, as well as a top 3 minor league system. So some of their minor league system has graduated to the majors, has dominated. Acuna Jr., Albies, Freddie Freeman is now getting older, but still he's under 30. It's just fascinating to see what's going on down there. Well, the farm system in number 3 says more reinforcements are coming. So at what point do you package some of these prospects to go get a proven veteran that can take you over the top? I mean, Freeman coming off of this COVID-19 situation, we talked about how there were some tough pastures. Nick Markakis now sitting out this season. Josh Donaldson was lost to free agency. The offensive side on this team is going to be a bit down, so maybe you package 1 or 2 minor league individuals to go get another bat, another third baseman to come in, hold the fort down in the hot corner, and really take a run at things, because it'd be frustrating as a Braves fan year after year, once again, kind of like in the 90s, win the NL East, lose in the first round. Win the NL East again this summer, even if you make the NLCS, losing to the Dodgers. Just knowing that you are really good, but not great, and there's a lot of, different factors attributing for that as an organization. So, number 3 here, Chicago White Sox. They got the number 12th ranked minor league system. They're looking to add to the whole team. Honestly, they're looking to add a third baseman as well, potentially. But now pitching. I just talked about Michael Kopech is opting out. He was going to be looked at as somebody who was going to give them quality innings this year. Like I touched on it, a triple-digit guy, 100-mile-an-hour plus. Well, now they're not going to have him, whether it's in the rotation or the bullpen. Third baseman, they're looking, to improve. They got Dallas Keuchel. They did make some additions, but this is a team that could be on the cusp, and if they are willing to move on from some prospects to add a veteran arm or a veteran bat down the stretch for the 3 weeks now down the stretch, the month of September, 3.5 weeks, could be fascinating to see them try to make a run at that, second AL wild card spot that's been elusive to the team on the south side for quite some time now. Next up, the Houston Astros. And honestly, I'm not the only one saying this. This is one of the teams that a lot of murmurs are coming out of camp in Houston. And this is due to ownership basically having the mindset of the biggest way we could shut people up about the trash can banging in 2018, 2017, all of it, is to win another World Series and to do it after we've been reprimanded for the past. So there's not, well, was there a buzzer last year? Even if they would have won in 2019, are they using buzzers? Jose Altuve, well, all of that is now in the past. And ownership really, really wants to win a ring. So yes, they lost Garrett Cole, the rotation, but they still have Greinke, they still have Verlander, they still have Presley and Ozuna on the back end. That offense is still completely there. I've heard if the Phillies don't sign JT Realmuto, they may try to make a run at Realmuto. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. I think they go bullpen. I think they go complimentary piece. But rumor has it that in Houston, they really want to be aggressive and make a splash and make a move because they know right now it's pretty much them and the Yankees on paper if everything goes according to plan for another round in the ALCS. And it was a fun round last year, so this year looking to be the same. And on paper, I'd go advantage Yankees, and that's why the Astros would look to add. They added Zach Greinke last year, making a run. I think they would do the same this year with potentially a veteran. Maybe it's Jake Arrieta to get more innings down the stretch when the Phillies fall out of grace. Package him and JT. I don't know. Now we're getting crazy here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. But Houston, I'm hearing murmurs, is certainly going to look to be aggressive. Number 5 team, I have the LA Dodgers. You got to have the Dodgers on here. I know more Dodgers fans than I care to admit in the greater Philadelphia area, just due to people who were born out there, grew up out there. A lot of connections for LA and Philadelphia. A lot of people back and forth. And they just can't win the big one out in L.A. And they win 100-plus games every year. They're in the playoffs every year. I mean, hell, think about the Phillies run 07, 08, 9, 10, 11. They ran through the Dodgers. Well, now the Phillies are one of the worst teams in baseball. Not anymore, but they were. Now they're coming back up. Well, the Dodgers have been up that entire time. Maybe it was 1 year, 2 years they dipped down, but they stay at the top the whole time. The Phillies have lost almost 100 games while the Dodgers are still there. And the Dodgers still haven't won anything. The Phillies have won more than the Dodgers still in the last 15 years. And they, oh man, it's fascinating. LA just can't win the big one. So with the number 9 farm system, with a lot of high-level talent graduating into the rotation, such as, well, not Lux in the rotation, but Gray and all those other guys out there. I can't think of their names off the top of my head. The guy with the crazy red hair, Walker Buehler. There you go. Now I'm getting a couple of them. But they could add pitching. If they really want to go crazy, maybe go for Francisco Lindor, try to flip Seager at the shortstop position. Yeah, it's for 3 weeks, but go for broke. Finally win that World Series. Have yourself a parade. Get Lindor, Betts, get them all. Let's go LA. Let's have some fun. Summer 2020 hashtag. But the Minnesota Twins, they have the number 15th ranked farm system, so not a ton of talent that they'd be able to move. Once again, people aren't going to move the top side of their talent, so when they're ranked lower in the farm system, that means that the drop-off from really those top-level prospects down to that next tier is further than the team is willing to admit, because every team has those 1, 2, or 3 guys that are studs, but beyond that, it's really where it comes to a depth piece, and being at 15 is right in the middle, which means you got 2 or 3 guys that are looking to be studs. Everybody else is a question mark and a lottery ticket. So the Twins would look to add pitching. I think offensively, they're pretty set where they're at there, but I see them potentially making a move to try to get over the evil empire, the New York Yankees. They got swept once again by the Yankees last year. They lost to them in the wild card years back. They just can't get over the October hump in New York City and win a game in the Bronx. It's kind of a fascinating under the radar, just, one of those yips where the Twins in New York City in Yankee Stadium are just, man, can't come away with a W. Number 7, the Philadelphia Phillies. Their farm system at number 17, even worse than the Minnesota Twins. Like I said, 3 guys really at the top that they're not moving on from. And then those next level of prospects aren't going to net you the top tier guys. So look for the Phillies to maybe add a bullpen arm if they can hang around. Make a push in the month of August, heading into the month of September. You're going to want to fortify the bullpen. The rotation has enough options or enough pieces through the minor leagues, through the current roster to be okay. The lineup, if everybody stays healthy, is just fine. It really is that bullpen that Philadelphia could look to improve upon moving forward. Number 8, I got the San Diego Padres. They got the number 4 ranked farm system. And I don't know if they're there yet. This is one team that has the ability, they have the goods, the option to make a move at the trade deadline. There were talks or rumors that they actually turned down a deal for Chris Bryant, whether it was this offseason or last trade deadline. The Cubbies were asking for a few of their top-level prospects. The Padres said thanks, but no thanks. Do they revisit the Chris Bryant territory if the Cubbies fall out of grace and they know he's going to look for the big bucks and move on? If San Diego makes a run, even if they're not pushing the Dodgers at the top, if they're able to get over the Rockies, who shouldn't be very good, the Diamondbacks out there in the West, could they be somebody, pushing themselves down the stretch here in regards to looking to add a big offensive piece to go with Machado, Tatis Jr., Hosmer, the likes of those guys offensively, and the prospects on the mound could fill out for a wild card position. But I also don't think you're going to go all in just to get to a one-and-done wild card spot against the likes of the Nationals or the Phillies or the Cardinals, Brewers, whoever it may be. It's tough to give up top-level prospects for 3 weeks for somebody. It's even tougher to give it up for 3 weeks and then a one-and-done scenario when it comes playoff time. You only make those moves if you're making that best-of-3 divisional round for sure. Number 9, I got the Tampa Bay Rays. I really don't have any specific needs for the Rays. I have their farm system at number 1, which means they have plenty of depth and plenty of options, whether it's tier A, B, or C, in regards to the level of talent that they would like to add to their roster. They have that level of prospect to push back to that organization. Right now, on paper, I don't see any holes, but I do see a team potentially if the Yankees have some issues. Chapman's still out, coronavirus. They have some injuries. Tampa with that pitching staff is looking at winning the AL East and getting the Yankees into that wild card. They could look to make a complimentary move in the rotation or the bullpen, basically to add pitching come playoff time. They would have the goods to give it up and get it done. And then the last team here, the long shot, I put down the Toronto Blue Jays. Honestly, I just like their team on paper. They got the number 7 farm system still, even with the likes of, Bichette, Guerrero Jr., all of those guys up getting service time in the big. So they have ammunition with the number 7 farm system. They have a lot of needs, a lot of them being on the mound. But if the Yankees go cold, maybe they start out hot. Maybe we're getting into late August. They're hanging around a few games over 500. They could potentially move a B-level prospect for a number 4 starter or, somebody along those lines. A 7th inning guy, a swing guy in the bullpen, righty-lefty with the 3-batter rule. All of that good stuff that's happening here in the summer of 2020. That is Major League Baseball. But those 10 teams, I think, are the most likely to be buyers at the deadline, really to make a move to try to improve their status, whether it is to make the playoffs, make the wild card, win the division, or in the cases of the Astros and Dodgers, to win the World Series and ultimately hoist that piece of metal that Rob Manfred liked to mention it as. But that'll wrap it up here for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we're going to do our weekly look at the simulations. We're going to dive into Baseball Reference and Stratomatic, see where everybody's at, where the smart computers think everybody would be as we're heading here into the middle of July. So stick around, everybody. We're going to be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Mahalik, and this is episode number 205 of the Baseball Podcast. Do me a favor real quick before we head into this segment. Scroll up wherever you're listening to this on the podcast. Like, rate, review the podcast. Help us spread the word of the GSMC Baseball Podcast as we continue to get closer and closer to actual baseball this summer, to getting into actual content around pitching outings, pitching discussions, pitch selection, actual at-bats, thought process around individuals and the entire at-bat, games, action, plays. It's just, oh my God, I can't wait to talk about actual baseball with everybody out there. But this is the next best thing we have here, jumping right into segment number 4, is the Stratomatic and baseball reference simulations that are going on for 2020. And honestly, I think I'm going to check into these even as real baseball is going on. Maybe it'll be every other week and not every week or so, as we've done here over the past month, touching base every Sunday night for the end of the week, kind of seeing where we're at here. So diving right into baseball reference, let's see, looking at team by team, the AL East, the New York Yankees, 59-36, 11 games up on the Tampa Bay Rays, who are the only other team above 500 at 49-48. So New York doing their thing, Tampa Bay disappointing as 1 game over in regards to baseball reference. Looking at Stratomatic, Tampa Bay leading the division by 6 games, but the Yankees 5 games over 500, so New York still performing relatively well, but would certainly be a disappointment at that rate there in the AL East. So baseball reference says Tampa, you're the disappointment. Stratomatic says not so fast. It's the New York Yankees who would be letting people down. Going over to the AL Central, baseball references going Cleveland and Minnesota being the 2 squads here in contention. Cleveland 62-35, Minnesota 55-43, both impressive, both very much realistic. And then the White Sox at 4 games under seem to be a year away from making that step here for baseball reference. Looking at Stratomatic, Cleveland and Minnesota, pretty much the same thing. 7.5 back in baseball reference, 6.5 back in Stratomatic. So on the same page there in the AL Central. Going out to the AL West, the Oakland Athletics lead the way for baseball reference. Seattle continues to just pour it out, 14 games over. Fascinating. I don't even see them winning 56 games all year if they were having 162. The LA Angels 12 games over 500, and then Houston 5 games over with Texas in the basement. So AL West, the strongest division according to baseball reference. You hop over to Stratomatic, they're heavy on the Houston and Oakland train, and that's about it. My beliefs, my predictions tend to align more with Stratomatic when it comes to the AL West, because here in baseball reference, you'd be looking at Yankees, Indians, Athletics, and then your wild card would be the Mariners and Twins. The Twins would make it over the Angels by a game. According to Stratomatic, you would have the Tampa Bay Rays, Cleveland Indians, and Houston Astros, with your wild card teams being the A's and the Twins, with the New York Yankees a game and a half out here in the middle of July thus far. That would be a very interesting American League wild card, to say the least there, Oakland and Minnesota. Going over to the National League, the Atlanta Braves and Washington Nationals, according to baseball reference, are tied at first. The Philadelphia Phillies, 4 games over 500, but 8.5 back in the division, find themselves looking up at those teams. The NL East, Stratomatic has Washington with Atlanta 4 games back and the Phillies right at 500. So Atlanta and Washington 1-2, pretty much status quo. Going to the NL Central, baseball reference has the Cardinals 8 games up, but the Brewers over 500. Everybody else in the division under 500. You go over to Stratomatic, they got the Brewers leading the division, and the Cardinals a game behind them. Everybody else right around 500. So Brewers and Cardinals seem to be agreed upon. And then out west, the Dodgers, and then the Rockies over 500 for baseball reference. Out west, Stratomatic, the Dodgers, and then they actually have the Padres. They're high on the Padres for Stratomatic. So looking at the baseball page here, baseball reference, the playoffs for the National League, you'd go Braves, Cardinals, Dodgers, and then you would have the Nationals and Rockies for the wild card. Stratomatic, you would have the Washington Nationals, Milwaukee Brewers, LA Dodgers, with a wild card, a 3-way tie of San Diego, St. Louis, and Atlanta. So that would be a lot of fun. Atlanta would play St. Louis, and then the winner of that would play San Diego for the wild card. So really status quo there in the National League. Like we said, Washington, Atlanta, St. Louis, Milwaukee, and then LA, and somebody else is really where we see the National League going if we were to have 162 games. With 60 games, all of this is up in smoke. I mean, you get a hot 2 weeks, you get somebody going 10-2 over the course of 12 games, and you play 500 ball the rest of the way. You're staring at the playoffs, that's for sure. At least a wild card at the very least in that scenario, in whatever league you're in, American or national. But looking at some individual performances here, going at Baseball Reference, looking at the position players, who is leading the league in WAR. We have Cody Bellinger at 6.1 and Juan Soto at 6.0. And again, reference for WAR, 8+ is MVP quality, 5+ is all-star level quality, and these numbers accrue over time. So the likes of Bellinger and Soto are both going to be 8+, meaning they're having MVP level type years when it's all said and done come in September. But I want to give a shout out to my man Michael Brantley. He's at 379 for the batting average. If you guys listen to this show, I think that's up from where he was a week ago. Somebody out there getting my comments if that's wrong. I can't remember if it was 384. I think it was 374. So I think Brantley continuing to hit the crap out of the baseball. I'm rooting for somebody to hit as close to 400 as possible in one of these simulations. Let's see. Juan Soto, 341. Daniel Murphy, 338. Ozzie Albies, 337. Next in line when it comes to batting average. Juan Soto leading in on-base percentage, followed by Mike Trout. Juan Soto leading in slugging percentage. Juan Soto leading in on-base percentage plus slugging. OBP, oh man, he is just crushing the baseball offensively. And that's why the Nationals decided not to pay Bryce Harper $330 million over the course of 13 seasons. But looking at it here, home runs, round trippers, Cody Bellinger, 32. Pete Alonso, 31. Nolan Arenado and Yourdis Gurriel at 30. Juan Soto at 29. But RBIs, Juan Soto, 94. Oh, man, there's my guy, Yordan Alvarez, 91. He's creeping back up, Mr. Soto. He had a huge lead early on in the year, but now finds himself trailing. But he's looking to get back to the top. Let's see, stolen bases. Here at Baseball Reference, they love Malik Smith. He's at 50. Next up, you got Byron Buxton and Alberto Mondesi at 29 and 27. From the offensive perspective. Let's transfer over to Stratomatic, see if we have any cross-reference here in regards to the names. The average, nowhere near the 379 Michael Brantley is at, but his teammate Jose Altuve, according to Stratomatic, leading the way at 349. Akiyama in Cincinnati, 348. Charlie Blackmon, 343. Madrigal, 342. Your top guys, according to Stratomatic. As we're scrolling down here, let's see. Home runs. Jorge Soler, 36. Wow. He's not on the list for Baseball Reference, but Stratomatic likes the big guy in Kansas City. Trevor Story with 32. Torres with 30. Suarez, 27. Lindor and Reyes, 26 in Cleveland. Wow, Cleveland back-to-back guys with 26 there. RBIs, 102. Oh, this would top both of those in Baseball Reference. I just said Soto would have 94, Alvarez 91. Well, Jorge Soler has 102 to go along with his 36 home runs. That is 25 ahead of the next guy. Wow, the next guy, Hiura in Milwaukee was 77, Arenado 73, Story 73. So those two guys hitting the crap out of the baseball out west for the Colorado Rockies, which is keeping them in it offensively. Let's see, as we continue to scroll here, trying to navigate through some of the offensive statistics. Stolen bases, VR, 28, Yelich, 27, Turner, 26. If Yelich were to have 27, that would be very impressive for a guy who really does it all. Hits bombs, hits for average, RBIs, stolen bases, OBP, all of the above. Just a fascinating offensive specimen there if he really were to steal almost 30 to 40 bags like we saw 40 to 40 last year with Acuna Jr. Down in Atlanta. All right, let's jump over to the mound here. Let's wrap things up talking about the pitching side of things. Back to Baseball Reference. Let's see here. WAR for pitchers. Max Scherzer, 5.0. Clayton Kershaw, 4.4. Jack Flaherty, 4.4. Your top three. Once again, 8 above. MVP, 5 above. All-star level quality. So Max Scherzer continues to plug right along. Kershaw him as well. Garrett Cole at 4-3. He's living up to that contract there in New York. Of course, the big bucks. Strasburg at 4-1 there, number 7. He's living up to the big bucks. He got to re-sign in Washington according to these simulations here. ERA, let's see, 2 Dodgers still at the top. Walker Buehler, 2.13. Clayton Kershaw, 2.17. But the surprise on the list, and this would be unbelievable if it happened, would be Ranger Suarez. He is a left-hander for the Philadelphia Phillies. 2.55 ERA here. He was an outside-the-box third candidate for the 5th starter spot this spring behind Nick Pivetta and Vince Velasquez, who are much more known across the baseball landscape. Well, both of those guys still did not impress this spring. And meanwhile, this lefty throwing, 90 miles an hour, 88, 90, little deception from the left side, was really strong in the bullpen last year after getting beat up a couple of starts. Well, now he found himself throwing quality start after quality start in the spring. Where's he going to start during this summer camp 2.0? Nobody knows, but this computer may be all over it at 2.55. So they would be the first ones to tell you something crazy's happening in Philly if the likes of Ranger Suarez is throwing to a 2.55. Let's see here. In regards to wins, Steven Strasburg has 13, along with Germain Marquise. Max Scherzer at 12, Bieber at 12, a few others there as well at 12. Strikeout, Scherzer leads the way at 207. Wow, he's really plugging along. Garrett Cole, 171. Giolito, 169. Buehler, 167. Very impressive for Max Scherzer. Even if he is a start ahead, you would think, that's 10, 12, 15 strikeouts tops? Well, he is 36 above Cole. So just clear-cut strikeout king this summer, according to Baseball Reference. Looking at saves, Kenley Jansen at 26, tied with Gallegos in St. Louis. And then you got Will Smith and Diaz next up at 24. Complete games, Zach Greinke leads the way with 4. That would be crazy. Nobody gets that many complete games anymore. 3 shutouts for Cueto and Bumgarner, so they each got 3 complete games. And, not going to happen. That's one thing I'm pretty confident in saying is we're not going to get a lot of complete games this summer in the shortened season because we didn't get them in a regular season, let alone a shortened season here. So jumping over to Stratomatic, talking about the pitchers. Let's see here. Looking at ERA, Clayton Kershaw, 2.11 when it comes to ERA, leading the way. He's officially jumped over Blake Snell, who's at 2.36. Max Scherzer, 2.59. Jacob deGrom, 2.60. Charlie Morton, 2.66. A lot of common names at the top there. Looking at wins, Clayton Kershaw, 14. Daniel Duffy, 12 in Kansas City. Scherzer, 12. Cole, 11. Gray, 11. A lot of common names there as well from the pitching side, according to Stratomatic. Let's see if we continue to find here. Stratomatic's a little bit harder to navigate than Baseball Reference, but it can be done. You just got to know where you're looking. Complete games, the list is number 1. A ton of guys with 1. So yeah, Baseball Reference with that 4 spot, 3 spot, that's too ambitious for me to ultimately, believe that one moving forward. But saves, let's see. We got Yates in San Diego at 31, Hader in Milwaukee at 30, Hendricks in Oakland 29, Diaz in New York at 28. That would be a bounce back year in New York for Diaz after they gave up a ton to Seattle to bring him east. He had a tough summer last summer. Hopefully he can figure things out. At least that's what they're hoping for. That's what they're going to need on the back end. Looking at strikeouts, Garrett Cole, 172. That's where he was on the other side, 171. But Scherzer only at 164, according to Stratomatic, and not the 207 Baseball Reference has him. But Jacob deGrom, 170. Blake Snell, 164. So a lot of strikeouts for your standard individual names there on the pitching side of things. But that does it, guys. Another episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast in the books. Another day closer to Major League Baseball. Once again, here we are on Monday. Hopefully you guys are listening to this episode early in the week. We're coming up. That means we're 10, 9, 8 days away from opening day. 3 more episodes before actual baseball to talk about. 2 more episodes before we have some preseason baseball to talk about, or exhibition games, and not just inter-squad action that's been going on here, where we're just seeing social media clips because it's not on TV. So, hey, baseball, put it on TV. I know MLB Network's giving me some goods. The Yes Network in New York, they've been doing their thing. But other than that, not a lot available right now on cable television for you out there. But once again, everybody, head to social media. Check out the GSMC Baseball Podcast as well as the GSMC Podcast Network. Leave a 5-star rating, write a review. I'll read it here on the show. That does it for this edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.